Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Get Ready Real with Mindset and Money. And today, Cheyenne's going to lead us into, we're going to talk about mastering grocery savings and family alignment, strategies for a thrifty kitchen. We're going to talk about a little bit about meal planning, about how to do that grocery bill. And this was inspired because she had a client who came to her saying, I have these adult kids who came back to our house. And we keep buying different things, and like how do we negotiate that and bring the bill together? But then we also went on the aspect of how do we also navigate that with children's activities and trying to get them having healthy meals without necessarily always going through the drive through. So how do we rectify that with the grocery bill and all those things? So I'm going to throw it over to Cheyenne.
Perfect. Thank you, Michelle. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Let's Get Real with Money and Mindset. So today with the grocery bill, yes, it's often a sticky point, and especially with inflation nowadays, it has been a pricey one. And I've always looked at ways, I'll be honest up front, I am a horrible meal planner myself. But with practice, I've been able to add extra little tips and tricks to my own strategy to make it effective. Now, if you're a meal planner, this is fabulous for you ways to save. Now, things that I found is we often were throwing away too much food. Why? Because I would get this grand idea to make something, I'd buy the supplies for it, and then ultimately not buy it. So I had to start being a lot more strategic with how I was spending my money, how I was planning our meals, and making sure that I was only buying really the necessities, really stepping back and going, do I really need the cilantro? Am I actually going to make something with it? Or is it just going to curl up and die in my fridge? Right. And so, and then, yes, with that other conversation, when if you have adult children that have come back home, a lot of people realize that during COVID, or just with inflation, people are losing jobs, dynamics are changing. And one of the strategies is figuring out how can we get together as a group in your family and making sure everybody's on the same page. Because if everybody, and this can go for college roommates or anything, is if all of you are buying food, but you're throwing away even a quarter of it just because it's not being consumed, because everybody's like, oh, well, I don't want to eat that because that's someone else's, or I don't really have a plan with it, then it just ends up for a lot of waste, not only of the product, but of the money itself that took to buy it. And so I often recommend, sitting down and getting everybody on the same strategy. And I don't know about in your household, but in mine, I'll ask my kids, what do you want to eat? I don't know, really. So we
Yeah.
all end up on the same page, right? We all don't know what we want to eat. And so things that I try to do is implement. It's like, okay, when I go shopping, I'm going to buy something like a turkey is a prime example of you buy one thing and you can make many different meals with it. And you just have to get creative. What are some things that you can buy that you can make multiple meals and not have soup for 7 days? Because I, for one, I'm fine with warm ups, but I really don't want the same soup all week for every meal, right? So some of the suggestions I have is like with turkey, you can make the roasted turkey with the sides. You can break it down and you can make sandwiches for lunches, but get creative with those. Make sure you have some basics on hand. Like if you like pepperoncinis and jalapenos or different cheeses or certain things that you like with those, make sure you have those things on hand to make that sandwich exciting instead of a plain turkey sandwich, right? You can make, chicken or turkey fried rice. You could make it into a hot dish. There's just so many different uses for that. So find, one big thing that you can break down. The other thing I found is, if I got tired at the end of dinner and I didn't feel like deboning the turkey or things like that, well, guess what? Most of it didn't get eaten because no one wanted to go through the work afterwards to clean it off. So just to save, so to make sure that it was consumed, make sure that when you already have the mess out, get it all broken down, put it in a little baggies for, especially if you have younger kids that know that, if they just go grab a little Ziploc bag or I've started switching to a lot of glassware just because then I'm not, again, it's savings, not having to throw away a whole bunch of Ziploc bags. I can wash a container. And, making it so it's simple and easy. The other thing we touched on when I was working with Michelle is processing your produce. If your kids go into your refrigerator to go get an apple, are they actually going to remember to wash it? So there's plenty of food safe cleaners out there, but not only does it make it safe for them to consume without, right away is if you wash it when you come home. So I go through a process. If I buy a whole bunch of vegetables and stuff from on my shopping day, when I get home, before I put it in the fridge, I run it through my sink full of the cleaner for my vegetables, and I cut it all up, have it prepped and ready to go. Not only does it allow for them to be more open to eat it, it also makes it easier for when you're ready to cook it, if you're actually going to cook with it, roast vegetables and whatnot. Um, and I know, Michelle, you were talking about having things that were ready to eat. That's another way to make it easier. If you're running out the door, throw a few vegetables in a in a container and have some turkey and just have sandwiches or it doesn't have to be sandwich. It can just be the meat and vegetables and run
Well,
with it.
we were talking about looking at your calendar. So I mean, with summer it might be a little bit different coming up, but you might have a whole bunch of activities. But looking at your activities for the week, what days are you actually going to eat dinner together as a family? What days are certain kids in the car? And planning that out when you're doing your shopping, so that you're not having to always run through the drive-through. And then sometimes we make those days that they're in the car. Those are leftover days, and we just warm them up in a container right before they get home. I get that ready for them, and then send them on their way with the container full of their dinner. And so it makes it a lot easier when we plan that out. And so then we'll know, okay, even if we just, my husband and I are like, okay, I need 2 dinners this week, I need 3 dinners this week, and even if we don't necessarily have a plan, it either goes grocery store, we just know we're buying that amount of food for those many meals, and then we turn that into leftovers or things. Or then knowing, on days where, as we were talking about, where you're going to be in the car longer and you want to do those sandwiches and stuff, but how can you do things like maybe you don't want the bread or something, so you can do more like make your own Lunchable or something in those terms of where you can have that ready, and it doesn't matter if it sits, because it doesn't need to stay warm. So those are some of the things, and it's always looking at that calendar. And the other thing I want to point out too is sometimes with that decision fatigue of what do we have, what do we eat, making a schedule. Like for us, we have a breakfast schedule. So Mondays are oatmeal, Tuesdays and Fridays are eggs, Wednesdays are waffles, and Thursdays are cereal days. So they do get their cereal once a week, at least during the weekdays for school. My son was getting mad at how processed the waffles were and really annoyed by it, that actually 2 weekends ago, he found recipes for frozen French toast and frozen pancakes to make those ahead of time and put them in the freezers for those Wednesday days. And that was his own looking at the nutrition labels and stuff and deciding that we don't want to do these frozen waffles. So that there's possibilities out there of what works for your family. But yeah, he made fresh French toast, fresh pancakes that were freezable, and then they were designed to do that. And then we had those last couple of Wednesdays as well.
Yeah, and that's fantastic that you're encouraging him to go look out and find other solutions. If you don't like what we have, offer other solutions and see. It helps bring that unity into what you're trying to accomplish with your meals. And being thrifty with it, and making sure, if you eat a lot of avocados, making sure you're not buying 20 when you only need 7, just being aware. And we talked about, research ways to keep those things fresh. One thing that I found with avocados, for example, is I buy them green hard and on purpose, because then everybody doesn't have their fingers all over them, putting all the little dents in them, right? And what I found is when I buy them that way, they don't have all the little bruises in them. And I just let them ripen naturally on my counter. And then when they're ripe, I put them in the fridge, and then they last several more days before they actually are not edible anymore. And then, so you're solving multiple problems with that. They last longer. You're not getting all the bruising in the inside because you're not picking up the ripe ones ready to eat. And then, just making sure I'm aware that, I'm not going to go buy a whole bunch unless I purposely am, with intent, going to make sure I eat them. Because that's ultimately where I threw a lot of food away was, I would have the intent was at the grocery store, but when it came down to it, we always had different ideas and never got to it made. And so just making sure everybody was on the same page with that. But there's definitely a lot of different ways to save. And you were talking about taking your vacation. And one of the things when I was young and we'd go on a family vacation or travel, my mom, we would buy a loaf of bread, cotto salami, and I think mustard. I don't know. I didn't like mustard. I still really don't prefer it, but it was just a quick, simple way to have a meal without having, to save money, because it at the time was cheap. Now, of course, a lot of the processed salamis and stuff like that aren't as cheap as they were back then, but It was just a quick solution. And so one thing that I've learned with taking our boys is oftentimes we will stop at a grocery store instead of fast food to pick up snacks. So we can pick up healthier options than the grocery store that's going to hold up and be there for a while. But one thing I have learned that's helpful is to actually pack our paper products, our plates, our spoons, our condiments, because that's where your price goes way up. If you've already bought them on sale, you already have opened ones in the fridge. Otherwise, we'd end up with multiple open ones in the fridge because we come back from the trip with them, with new ones. And so then I said, well, let's just pack a cooler with those things that we're going to use and take them with us. And then that way you're ready to just go to the grocery store and get those last minute things. So you don't want to have to pack this great big cooler full of food, because I found that's not always helpful, because then what sounds good or what holds up in the cooler isn't as what, it doesn't end up being all consumed either, because then we end up packing way too much. Whereas if we went to the grocery store on our trip and just had the basics with us, then we could be more strategic and only buy the amount quantity we needed for that moment or that day in our travels.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, you're going to stop for food no matter what. So it depends on how you want to do it. And I also was saying that the one thing too is for the kids is sometimes having some sort of container for the car, which makes less of a mess too, that you keep dishing things out. Or even if you do get some of the fast food, you can divvy it into those containers without getting the French fries all over the floor or whatever it is for that day. But it gives you more variety and being able to rinse those out and stuff along the way as well. But I agree, like the more you can make it easier and give yourself different options. And again, when we're looking at groceries and stuff, we're trying to take away some of that decision fatigue, because we get into that mode, and then that's when we start either buying too many things because we can't make up our minds. But again, with the meal plan, and I actually want to bring you back to explain your jar technique, because I think that would be a great thing for the
audience. Yeah. So a creative way to, since no one really wants to make decisions, would be to just write out a whole long laundry list of all the favorite meals. Not when it's meal time, because some people are like, oh, I can't think of dinner when it's breakfast time. Fine, don't think of dinner when it's breakfast time. Let's find some random part in the day. Maybe you have a family meeting, or you're just gathering, at the kitchen table after dinner or something like that, and just sit down and write down your favorite meals for the different meal times and cut them up and put them in a jar. So then when you're doing your meal plan, if no one really wants to make a meal plan, just draw them out and say, oh, I guess we're having spaghetti this week, and add the necessary things on there on your list. But another way to save with that is to make sure you have the staples on hand, so that if maybe what you missed a day to plan, or maybe you decide you want spaghetti, but if you've bought your spaghetti pasta, for example, on sale, and you bought a couple extra boxes, now all you need is just a couple more things to make that whole meal. You're not actually buying everything for the meal if you're able to save in other ways by watching sales and things like that. Just making sure you have those basics on hand. One of the things the boys and I recently did is we got a recipe for a really quick bread recipe. So we took this bun recipe and we made homemade little pizza buns out of them and just different things. But we already had the staples on hand. And so just made it really quick. And we just found stuff out of the fridge, out of the cupboard that we already had, just to create something different. And it was really, we had them made in less than 30 minutes. It was just a quick, easy way to throw something new in the oven, right? But yeah, just, making the plan. And if planning is not your forte, then how else can you do it? Jars, making sure you have a shopping list. If I have the rule, if it's not on my list, it's not getting bought. And so they've grumbled over it when they were learning, but and I have too. It's like, oh, I forgot. Like, well, not till next time. And I purposely don't go all the time. I go every other week when I have my kids, and then that's it. Because unless I've really messed up and missed something really that we needed, or we end up, getting invited somewhere and we want to make a special dish that we don't have the supplies for. Otherwise, I make very few exceptions for going more often to the grocery store, because then, like you said, that decision fatigue, and you start putting all the extras in your cart. And that's also where the waste came in too, because you just buy all the extras with all these grand plans and then realize, oh, I only have this many meals to make. I don't need 10 meal preps. I only need 5 or whatever, Exactly. Or making sure you have leftovers, like you were talking about. making enough so that you can put them in containers. So now you have warmed up lunch. I used to do that all the time. Well, try to, except unless the kids demolished the dinner, then I was left scrounging for my lunch. But I always made sure I had enough for at least one lunch after a meal, just to save on the lunches. So,
Well, I think we covered a lot of things on meals today. And so, again, it's really just the more that you are able to plan ahead and the more you're able to do those things beforehand instead of making those decisions when you're at the grocery store, then you end up getting more things in your cart. Because I like your idea of like, if it's on the list, don't get it. Because it was so easy to just go, oh, well, I need that. Or that looks really
yep,
good, but when you're there and
yep,
this is the cutoff point. Like if I haven't already said I'm going to have it, then it's time to move on, right? So
yep,
I mean, we use Alexa all the time, so it's just like, can I add this to the grocery list? Can we add this to the grocery list? And I'll look at that list, and then I realize that there's been things on there for months because like I either got them or didn't take them off the list. So it's like find that spot though for you where you can add those things in there and then stick to it
yep.
as much as possible. And I love how you did that. And so tell everyone how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the easiest way. Of course, through my Facebook, you can always private message me through there as well. I'd be happy to have a discovery call to see how further we can help you find your sticky points within your money problems, and find solutions. And how about for you, Michelle?
The best spot was connectingmamas.com, which I put in the description down below too. And if you click on that, you can get your free gift on 10 ways to help busy moms reclaim their mornings in 1 minute. Because we want to just start getting that mindset shift going and getting in there and just helping each other get on the same page. And Cheyenne and I are all just about connection and helping you guys get some new resources. And so we just love to connect with you and help you in any way that we can. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Take care, guys.